Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Thrive. It's your host, Carly, and I have a beautiful guest with me today. We are joined by Jamie, who is a work play coach, and I just love everything that you're about, Jamie. I love your energy, and I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. I have loved everything that you post from the moment. I don't know how we connected. The universe must have brought us together.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I love being in your spaces. So I'm very excited to be on your podcast as well.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm so excited to have you here. And yeah, Jamie has just gone through Clients Confidence and Cash, which has been absolutely an incredible experience. It's been so great to have you and your energy in that container as well. So, yay. So, I would love to get started with, the age-old question. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. And it's such a broad question, so you can answer this however you like. But yeah, tell us a little bit about Jamie.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I have just finished, I'm just at the end of Clients, Confidence and Cash, and highly recommend. I loved it so much. I
Oh.
wasn't the best student in terms of like following the modules through, but just being in that container and working with Carly has been amazing. So
And
just a
we
little
had,
shout out to you, a little
oh,
testimonial.
thank you. And we had some very powerful sessions together and very powerful moments, like sort of uncovering your ideal client and working through all of that stuff. So it was incredible. You were a wonderful student. So thank you for
Oh,
being
thank
there.
you. Okay, so what I do, as Carly has said, I'm a work play coach. I want to just pause there for a minute to say that I gave myself that title because I wanted to, and we are grown-ups and we can do what we want.
Heck yes.
Um, yeah, so actually, I have only just recently pivoted to being a work play coach. I was previously a PhD coach, and I still actually do run trainings for PhD students and postgraduate research students via universities.
Hmm.
But the coaching element of what I do now, I have expanded from working only with PhD folk to now working with self-employed folk, freelancers, solo business owners. And what I do is to work with them, support them to really design and curate a work life
Mm.
that is going to be supportive of their business and their work goals, but that also still allows and makes room for a lot of play, a lot of rest, a lot of the stuff that we all love
Hmm.
and that are important to us, but that usually gets put on the back burner because of work and business. So I'm really all about helping people get back into that space where they're in love with their business, they're in love with their work, and where work feels like play. You know,
Yeah.
you get up in the morning and you're excited about what you want to do, and every day feels like a holiday because you love your work so much. So
I
it's
love
getting
that.
people back into that space.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
brilliant. And we'll talk a little bit about, maybe some of the other areas that you've worked in before. But I know for me, I worked in the corporate world before running my own business. And it's funny, it actually sort of took me a little while to detach from that model of, working in business and you must work between the hours of 9 to 5 and, wear
Mhm.
this and say that. Um, before I actually sort of gave myself permission to inject a bit more fun and kind of go, hang on, this is my business. I get to do it
Yeah,
my way.
yeah, that's a big part of my coaching work is helping people to really untangle those messages that they bring over from full-time employment, like whether that's, in a corporate setting or whatever setting, like everything in any full-time employment, there are going to be rules.
Yeah.
Um, and just very very universal rules like, oh, a worthy job is one that's 9 to 5. You've got to be working 5 days a week, you only get an hour for lunch, all
Hmm.
these kinds of rules um, that actually aren't necessary in our and can even be counterproductive and unhelpful in our own businesses, but
Yeah.
that we have absorbed and have taken as gospel, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really about untangling all of those old messages from what it is that actually does serve us, and
Mm.
giving ourselves permission to drop that old conditioning and that old programming.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I guess, I got to this point where I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm not enjoying my business. Like I was doing what I thought I had to do, what I, thought I should do. And I was like, this is actually harder and probably less fulfilling than if I was working a 9 to 5 job. So I had this moment where I was like, Carly, you've got to decide what you're going to do. Are you going to go all in on your business and do it your way, or are you going to go back and get a job?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
because what's the point then, right? If you're doing something
Yeah.
that feels worse.
That's right. And it is like, we know that when you're setting up a business, like it does take a lot of time and energy and effort, and you really want it to be something that you love and that you're really passionate about. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge advocate for the work that you do. So I'd love to know a little bit about like how you got to this place. Like you worked in four big industries, and you then decided, you like made the decision to be like, fuck this, I'm going out on my own, I'm going to go and do my own thing. So I'd love for you to just sort of share a little bit about your journey working, and then how you kind of got to this point where you were like, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So to be honest, I'm 43 now, and it didn't even jig for me that I had come through these four big institutions
Mm-hmm.
up until a few months ago, and actually claiming for myself that that was actually kind of a big deal. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just a little story time. I started my career as a newspaper journalist in the largest national daily newspaper in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, which is where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did that for a while, and then I went freelance. I was still working with that newspaper as well as other English publications in Malaysia and some PR companies as well. Then I went, so from newspapers, media, I then went into working with a spiritual organization. So that's religion. It
Mm-hmm.
was a religious organization. That's another big institution with all of its own rules.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I then left that and went into fashion, a fashion magazine.
Wow.
So I worked with the Malaysian edition of Elle magazine. Um, that's another big institution, right? Fashion and media, actually. I guess if you're in a fashion magazine, it's a overlap of two really big industries.
Yeah.
And then from there, I decided to go back and do my PhD. So I then went back into academia. And being at a university at that sort of a level when you're doing doctoral research and you're almost kind of working in a way. It is different than being an undergraduate student, or we a lot of PhD students don't even think of themselves as students, so they think of themselves as researchers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a slightly different dynamic, and just you're really seeing a lot more of the kind of control and the rules and the patterns that you don't as a younger student. So yeah, it was media, religion, fashion, and academia. Those are four massively influential institutions in the world, and I don't care where you are in the world, you will have some sort of influence from one of those four industries, I think, right?
Absolutely. At least,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they really shape those industries, not only shape the way we think about work, but they really shape how we think about what it means to be a valuable, good, worthy human being, right? Like what it means to live and be a productive member of society and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And right down to, I was across the four industries, it's from a top level of what it means to be successful all the way down to like, how your body should look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being in fashion, for example, that's very much about, what it means to be beautiful, what it means to be thin, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then, so my last stop was in academia. I was just finishing up my PhD and then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was finishing up my PhD while we were all in lockdown in the UK. Um, And I didn't at the time intentionally choose to go out on my own. I kind of rolled into it.
Hmm.
Um, but once I was in there, I realized, hang on, this is great. And I don't actually ever want to go back to
Yes.
working with someone full time.
Yeah.
Um, and that, I mean, this may be the case for a lot of people as well. I know that there are people who very intentionally say, I don't want to work in a um, full time context with an organization anymore, and they very consciously and intentionally make that decision to step away.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a lot of us out there who kind of roll into this self-employed space and
Hmm.
suddenly find ourselves there, and then are like, oh my gosh, now what?
Yeah.
And it can be a little bit frightening. It can be a little bit anxiety making, but I think it's also very, very freeing to suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I don't have to answer to anyone.
Hmm.
And everything that I'm creating is from me and for the causes that I really believe in.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
that's
love that.
that's a whistle stop tour through my career.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible, and I know that there would be a lot of people listening who are either maybe in a corporate or in a full-time role right now, and maybe they're looking for something else, or they've
Mhm.
fallen into a role where they are self-employed, and they're thinking about whether they may need to one day go back. So I think it's really cool to share your story. So thank you for that. Um, and what would be some of the challenges that you've kind of experienced on this road to, being self-employed, and how have you moved through them? Because I think that's another really big thing too. And part of what I am really passionate about is kind of normalizing these challenges, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of people share on social media, and we love that, and we celebrate that. And also, like, people sometimes leave out those challenging parts. And so then, someone comes in and they start their business and they're like, oh, I thought this was going to be a lot easier. And they're kind of then shocked, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a whole other conversation to be had about the
Mm,
kind of smoke and mirrors that a lot of people online put up around what it means to run your own business.
mhm.
There's so much out there around the, oh, I made, six figures in 3 months, or like I hit my first five-figure month within 14 days of starting my business, and all of these stories,
Yeah,
but we don't hear about the years of preparation before that, or what led up to that.
yeah,
And yeah, maybe there are some exceptional cases where there is overnight success, but I think in for most of us out there, it doesn't happen overnight.
yeah.
And we don't talk about those challenges enough. We don't talk about the messy, those moments where you're sitting on your sofa, like sobbing your eyes out because you're worried about the next paycheck or whatever.
100%. Yeah, or you're waking up in the middle of the night, like, worrying
Yeah,
about, like, oh my gosh, where's my next client going to come from? Or, is my offer, or
yeah.
is my program the right thing that I should be doing right now? Should I be looking at something else? And all of these thoughts that just go through our heads.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Mhm.
every day. I think that
Mhm.
that is one of the challenges for
Yeah,
sure, that we need to normalize and to say every one of us have those thoughts. Every one of
agree.
us have those worries. And it's not only okay, it's almost like necessary that we have those thoughts. And that is that process of growing as a solo business owner, or as a self-employed person.
Yeah,
And really, that's where your strength comes from, right? Like that's where your growth is, because then you're really looking at yourself and how you are and what you're doing, um, and not letting yourself get dragged down by the thoughts, but like actually using that messiness as magic and as fuel to take your next steps.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, challenges. Let's go back to that. The financial challenge is a very real one. I think that's probably one that a lot of people will struggle with at first. And if you're still in full-time employment, thinking of leaving, that's usually the first stop. Like, oh my gosh, well, where am I going to make money? I don't have that regular income coming in anymore. How am I going to do that? And maybe that is a reason that a lot of people stay in full-time employment and don't make that leap.
yes.
Um, so two things, I think. So the first is I do think it's a good idea to have some sort of nest egg or a savings, a little savings set aside
Yeah.
if you did want to make the leap, so that you have um, a little financial runway, some leeway of at least, I would say at least 6 to 12 months, depending on how much time you want to give yourself.
Yeah.
So that you know at least that, okay, I have something set aside to cover my bills or whatever it is,
Yeah.
so that you can then be building your own business from a place of financial safety.
Yeah. I
So
completely
that's one
agree with that.
option.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. The second option, which is what I did, was to also maintain some part-time work alongside building out my business.
Yes.
So, I had some part-time gigs going. I was fortunate enough to have part-time gigs that I also loved doing. Like they were also things that that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Um, so that was keeping me going and paying the bills
Hmm.
alongside me building this thing out. So, whenever I was sitting down and creating for my business, it was coming from a place of safety and genuine, like wanting to be of service and
Hmm.
creativity and all of that, rather than coming from a place of like, oh, I have to write this post and cinch this sale in order to pay my bills. Like it wasn't, there's a very different energy in that, I think.
So
So yeah,
different.
doing
Yeah.
whatever it takes to generate that safety, that financial safety for yourself, whether that's a savings thing or some part-time work. I also know some people who have started their business and then thought, oh, this isn't sustaining me for now. I'm going to go back into some full-time work for a while,
Yep.
save up, and then come back into this.
Yep.
And I do just want to say, like, there's no shame at all in doing that. Um, like ultimately nobody cares. Like do what's going to make you feel safe and good so that you can then bring your best self into your business.
Absolutely. And I have spoken with so many people who have said they sort of resisted getting some sort of work, because they were like, I shouldn't need to. I should be further along, right? But the moment that they did go and get that work, it was kind of like, the pressure just released. And then all of a sudden, instead of creating and showing up out of lack and out of scarcity, they were showing up from this place of abundance and they were able to share what was truly, truly within them. And their energy just completely changed. And that was the thing that actually shifted things for them. So I love that you've mentioned that.
Yeah, I think we don't talk about that enough, do we? Like
No.
there's a lot of really toxic messages in the coaching industry around like, oh well, if you haven't made your first 5-figure month,
Hmm.
then it's because you're not doing the work. You've just got to hustle more, or it's your mindset. You need to work on your mindset more and work on your money mindset more. And it's like, yes, you do that. You do the
Yeah.
money mindset and the manifestation and the other mindset work,
Hmm.
but you've got to pay your bills, right? Like
Yep. A hundred
and
percent agree. Hmm.
do what you need to do for that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And there is absolutely no shame. And it is something that I think that we should talk about a little bit more. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Um, so let's talk a little bit about a couple of the words that probably come up for a lot of people: hard work and success.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Let's talk a little bit about what they mean to you and what they might mean to other people, and how we can actually sort of use these to build more play, build more alignment, I guess, into what it is that we're doing.
Yes, I love that you asked me this. I really dislike the term hard work or the
Mhm.
phrase hard work. Um, I think we need to find a different word for that. And I've been thinking about this actually over the last few weeks. I think that the term hard work implies struggle, doesn't it? Like the word hard, nobody loves that word. Like,
Mhm.
oh, it implies that it's something you got to get through. There's like an edge to it, like a toughness to it.
Yeah.
And
And that's
it's
all the
it's also the
programming,
message
isn't
is
it?
that
Like what we've known hard work to be as we grow up, or maybe you've seen our
yes,
parents, working really
yes,
hard, and it's got that the programming stays, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's that messaging, and words have such power, as you know,
Hmm.
right? And all those messages that we get, like, oh, you've got to work hard before you can play hard.
Yes.
Or exactly what you said, like our parents, like the messages around, like, oh, if you work hard, then you'll be successful.
Hmm.
Um, and that's like the necessary equation that's kind of burned itself into our brains and our
Hmm.
hearts, right? Like
Hmm.
you can't have success or happiness unless you work hard. So there's this idea that like, and then there are also sayings around this, right? Like nothing good ever comes easy and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's, where we expect that we need to struggle. And if you don't struggle, if you are having fun, if you're enjoying what you're doing, if you're finding pleasure in what you're doing, oh, it can't be very good then, right? Like
Or
this
it's
idea that,
wrong. Yeah.
yeah, it's wrong, or it's like somehow a little bit, it's frivolous, or
Yes.
it can't be very substantial.
Hmm.
Um, so I have realized very recently as well that I still have a real resistance around the 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 thought of having to work hard,
Yeah.
because of all these associations. And as a generator in human design, I have the capacity to do a lot. And I'm sure as a manifesting generator, you know this. Like,
Yes.
I can very happily work for 12 hours and not feel it at all if it's something that I really enjoy.
Yes.
I can fully get into it. My whole heart, like every part of me is in what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
I don't even think of it as being a long day. Like, that's just what I do. Um, and conventionally, if someone from the outside was looking in at me doing that work, they'd think, oh, she works really hard. But it's not, I don't think of that as hard work. Um, and whenever I speak to like business mentor type people or whatever, or
Hmm.
business, established business people, they'll always say, like, oh, you've got to work hard, like nothing comes easy.
Mm.
And I really rail against that because it just I just I'm almost resentful of what it implies.
Mm.
Um, and I think that there is another way to do it where you maybe the phrase I've been working with is to work deeply and intentionally, um,
I love that.
rather than working hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I'm real. This is work that I'm doing at the moment to really release my fears and anxieties around the phrase hard work,
Yes.
and redefining what that means to me instead.
Hmm.
Maybe like work a lot instead of work hard,
Yeah. I mean,
because you
either
could
way, the
work a lot
language
and
is
enjoy that
so
work.
important, isn't it? The language matters.
Yeah,
Um,
it absolutely does.
yeah,
um and how we think of it, and therefore like the energy that you're bringing into the work that you're doing, right,
exactly.
that you're working hard at or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes.
um yeah, but so it's that's the first thing, I think, changing your or each of our own relationship to what it means to do the work. And this is why I call myself a work play coach, because it shouldn't just be about work. I think the word work also doesn't quite work for me.
Yeah. I
A
totally
terrible
get
pun.
it.
um yeah, because again, also work implies that like that's something separate than life. I mean, we talk a lot about work life balance, for
Mm.
example, as if work and life are two separate, like mutually exclusive things.
Hmm.
um but I really believe that if you're doing work in the best possible way. I'm not going to say the right way because I don't like those kinds of
Yeah,
terms either.
yeah.
Um, but if you're doing work that's fully aligned with you and
Yes.
your goals and your values, and it doesn't feel like work anymore.
Hmm.
It literally it's just you doing your thing. It's just you living your life and serving and being on purpose, living your life on purpose with purpose.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think really shifting, and that's part of the work that I do with people when we talk about designing your work life. It's really also shifting what work means to each person.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the word you used before when you said aligned work. Like, That's one of the things that I always come back to, is that, sort of said before, like I was at this point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. What feels more aligned for me? And then it tends to
Yeah.
feel easier, right? You can spend
Yeah.
those big blocks of time working hard, but it doesn't feel hard. And I actually finish and I feel energized and I'm like, all right, like, what are we doing now?
Yeah. 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 And then you drop into bed and you just feel like so satisfied by what you've
Yes.
done through the day. And then you're excited to start again the next day.
Absolutely. So, how can we create and bring more of that into our business? This, alignment, this energy, this, feeling that we're like, oh my God, I am so on purpose. Like, what are some things that people can do?
Yeah. Okay. So I think this also connects to what I was going to say earlier around redefining the meaning that success has for each of
Yes.
us. So I think this is really connected to that.
Hmm.
I think so staying on purpose and staying aligned, I think that very much will come when we also create and find our own best definitions of what it means to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, so I worked with a coach about a year ago.
Hmm.
She's not coaching anymore. She's gone into doing something else now, which is more aligned for what she wants to do, which I love.
Great.
And she talks about currencies of success.
Hmm.
Um, and as I was talking to her on a call one day, she said to me, "Oh, it seems very much like your currency of success is ease." Oh, and I just it really that really dropped in for me. And I thought,
Yeah.
yes, conventionally we think of success, money, wealth, status, reputation,
Hmm.
how big your house is, what brand
Hmm.
of car you drive, all of those
Hmm.
things. Having the nuclear family, getting married, 2.5 kids, all of that.
Yep.
Um, but success can be a feeling. And I think in most cases, that is actually what we're chasing. Even, with the fancy house and the wealth and all of that, it's not really about that. It's the feeling that those things, or the feeling that we think those things are going to give us.
Yes.
Um, whether that's safety or respect or power or whatever it is that we think it's going to make us feel.
Hmm.
Um, so I like to think like instead of fast forwarding, instead of always looking ahead to that thing,
Hmm.
let's fast forward it and bring that feeling in now. Like, where can we find that feeling now, right?
Yes, I love
So,
that.
where can we, for me, like, ease is such an important part of my values and my life. Um, and really leaning into like where in my life is there ease already and where can I create more and how can I incorporate and build ease into my work day and my business
Yeah.
and enjoy that ease even as I'm working.
Yeah.
Um, and as I do that, as I'm doing the work, I already feel successful. I already feel like I'm aligned and on purpose
Yeah.
because I'm literally working to the success that I've already envisioned for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And like I feel like it is so important that we define our own, version of success because I mean, I know that there are so many coaches out there who are like, well, I've got to get to 10 or 20 or 30K months because that's what a successful coach does, even if that goal may not be aligned for them.
Yeah, yeah,
And then they're working hard, right, to try and get
yeah.
to a goal that's not
That's
going to
not
give them the
theirs.
fit. Right, exactly. So it's like they're
Yeah,
borrowing goals because they feel like they have to,
yeah, yeah.
which I think just leads to being so dissatisfied and not enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, it's I've spoken to a few really established business people who have said, oh, you've got to figure out what you're doing. If not, your business right now is just a hobby.
Right.
And until you start making the money, it will just be a hobby. And
Mm-hmm.
that's again like another, I mean, that's a hobby is a kind of play, right?
Yes.
And I like, I kind of I sort of just nod my head when they give me the advice because it's well-meaning. But
Yeah.
I also am like secretly inside railing against that because I'm like, well, why can't your work also be your hobby? You know, like why can't
Absolutely.
it be something that you have fun with and play with and also make money from, right? To
Yes.
support you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine that, a lot of people that come to you that you work with are kind of like holding on to some of these programs of like, oh, in a 9 to 5 job, I cannot have fun. I cannot
Mm-hmm.
play. So how do you sort of help them, bring this more like, playful energy into what they do,
Into the 9 to 5,
into their business?
into their business.
Yeah, because they're still holding on
Yeah.
to that,
So
like, or, I can't have fun. Like, how can I associate work with fun? If I do that in my
yeah.
business and I let myself have fun, like, am I going to be as quote unquote successful? And how will people look at me if I'm prioritizing?
Yeah, how would people look at me? So I think
Yeah,
this also it does go back to what you define as successful, right?
it
So
does. Yeah.
that's the first piece, like really
Yeah.
getting clear for yourself what success is.
Mm,
And for some people, success is still like, no, you know what? I want to make 5-figure months. If you get
yes.
really clear with yourself and you're like, I want it to be about financial wealth,
Yep.
then let that be okay. Then,
Yep.
I think as long as you're clear as to what it is, what the end goal is,
Yes.
then the work starts to feel a bit easier and not so
Mhm.
hard because you know that it's a means to an end, whatever that end is, whether that end is ease or play or massive power or the Lamborghini or whatever.
Yep.
At least you're very clear on your goals.
Yeah.
um as to how to build fun into the day.
Mm.
So first of all, I like to always tell people to kind of do this a little bit backwards. So I like to plan a day backwards. And what I
Yes.
mean by that is, okay, like tune into what is fun and playful and important to you outside of the work and the business.
Hmm.
So what feels joyful to you, what is a kind of a non-negotiable for you in life, right? So that could
Hmm.
be family, for example, spending time with your kids. That could be a workout. It could be I need to watch an episode of Gilmore Girls every day or whatever to keep my sanity, whatever it
Yep.
or so for me, I don't like to just eat an instant noodle. Like I like the whole process of cooking and preparing my food and
Yeah.
doing that, like cooking the meal, whether
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
for lunch or dinner or whatever,
Yeah.
preparing the food myself.
Hmm.
So those, like identifying what are the things that feel fun and really nourishing for you
Hmm.
and plot that into your day first. So plan the fun first,
I love that.
lock that in, and then build your work around it,
Yeah.
right? So, and I know that that can feel really scary for people because then the first thought is, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to get everything done that I need to get done.
Yep.
But I promise that when you do that, when you plot your fun things in first, um, you will find that the work time becomes more intentional and focused and pleasurable even as well,
Mm.
because you know that, okay, this is time for work now, knowing that you have this fun thing up ahead or that that you've already locked in the fun thing.
Hmm.
So let's say you want your evenings off to spend with your family and to watch a box set or whatever.
Hmm.
um so whatever happens, you got to get shit done by 6 p.m.
Yep. Yep.
And just knowing that you've got this lovely juicy evening ahead of you, knowing that that is a non-negotiable and you've got to finish by 6 p.m.
Yeah.
That does make you more intentional while you're working.
Yeah.
um and that does in a roundabout way also make the work more enjoyable and more manageable as well.
Mm. Yeah, I totally get that actually. Like I always know that if I've got something that I'm excited about, coming up either at the end of the day or the end of or the end of the week, like I'm
Mhm.
always like, I've got to make sure that I get my work and stuff done because I'm so excited for this thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really relate to that. I love that.
Yeah, it does make you more, if you're more intentional with your fun, you're more intentional with the work as well. Because I
Yeah.
think that the tendency is if we don't plan those things in, then we're like, oh, let me just do another email, or let me just, if there's no
Hmm.
firm end point, you just roll and roll and roll forever. And then all the fun, actually life affirming things get dropped.
Yes.
And then you just become this shell of a person who's just chasing one work thing after the next.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I have to be honest, like I have stages where I am kind of guilty of doing that. So I love what you said there, and I'm actually going to try that out. I'm going to schedule my fun thing for the
Yes.
day. Yeah, that's really important. I love that.
I
Um,
think it also, sorry, just one last thing.
yeah.
It's also, and for some people, scheduling a big long thing may not feel comfortable at all at the moment. And so
Yeah.
it could just really be like a 20-minute walk that you
Yes.
schedule in, right? And what it does is you're starting to send a message to yourself and your brain that actually it's safe and that it feels good for me to do these things that feel joyful and
Mm.
affirming for myself. And then as you do that, it becomes more and more comfortable, and then you can build out and do more.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think that's fantastic. Um, Work-life balance. This is a term that we hear a lot, and I'm sure it's a term that you hear a lot. Like, can we sort of talk a little bit about what work-life balance actually means and, what does it look like? How can it look?
Yeah, I came across there's this real funny comedian on Instagram who he says he says he's an Indian guy, I think. And he says, we actually shouldn't be striving for work-life balance because who wants to have an equal split between work and life? Like, actually, you
Wow.
should be aspiring for there to not be a balance because we should always have more of life than work.
Yeah.
Like, there shouldn't be a balance.
Yeah, that's actually a really good
Um,
point.
yeah, yeah.
Really good point.
Um, yeah, and he's quite a potty mouth, like the way he talks. He says something like, if you have work-life balance, that itself is fucked
Right.
because like why would you want to have as much work as life in your life?
So true. Oh my God. Yes. Wow.
um so I like to think actually that work-life balance is not, it's not about the number of hours, like, oh, I spend 12 hours a day on work and 12 hours a day on life. it's
Yeah.
not it's not so literal. It's more it really is more of a mental and emotional thing. Like, so as I said when we started with this, if you're doing work that feels aligned and on purpose, it feels like play, right? Like
Yeah.
this is what the work play coaching is about. So it's not so much a work life balance, it's a work play balance or a work joy balance, I
Love
think.
that.
That yeah, so you could be you could be working 12-hour days,
Hmm.
but the work is so integrated with your values and your goals and what you love about what you do
Hmm.
that it doesn't feel like work. Like, it just feels like what you do. It just feels like life. It feels like play.
Hmm.
Every day feels like a holiday. Um, and I think that's when you've got it, that you're not even thinking about, oh, have I got the right work-life balance? Because it just, every moment just feels like you are living.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where do you think sort of people struggle with that? Like, because a lot of people are like say, "Oh, I've got to get the work right, the work-life balance in my life right." Is it because maybe they have a different definition of it, or they're just not sure how to
Um,
manage it?
so being a little bit more, I guess, back in the real world a bit,
Yeah.
I think it is a struggle because, there are people for whom the work, I think maybe this affects, no, I think it does affect self-employed people too. I think it's a
Hmm.
little bit harder when you're in full-time employment because there are such kind of rigid parameters, right? Like,
Yes.
they literally carve out the day for you, like the nine
Hmm.
to five. And then there are demands within the job that
Mm.
can sometimes leak past those hours, right? Then you have to bring work home or whatever. And there's always somebody up your ass about something or other.
Yep.
There's always, so you have maybe less control over that balance or stating those boundaries around your balance.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, so for people who are in those situations where you are having other people rely on you or
mm,
um, setting expectations on you, then that's really about setting your boundaries very firmly.
yeah.
Um,
I
well,
think
two
that's,
things.
sorry,
Sorry?
I was just going to say about boundaries. I think that's also really important in your own business as well.
Yes, yes,
Honoring, yeah, like your own boundary. Like, my boundary is that I finish work at whatever time and then I spend the time with my family or whatever it is,
yes.
And
Yeah.
if we're not honoring those boundaries, then that's going to feel really tough
Yeah,
as
and
well.
sometimes we can be a harder taskmaster than someone in a
Yes.
full-time job, right?
Yep.
Like in fact if we feel even more accountable to it because it's like, oh my gosh, if this fails, then I'm the only one to blame for this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but like I said, again, like someone's just being more intentional
Yeah.
with with the life part of that equation will
Mm,
also make the work part of that equation more intentional and more focused because
absolutely.
you're holding that boundary. And I think also another thing that happens when you hold that boundary is that you really start to see what is or isn't important within the business too. So if I've got to finish this thing by 6 o'clock, or I've got to, I'm very firm about closing my week off on a Friday.
Yeah.
Um, then it gets a lot clearer. Like, oh, actually, I don't need to be spending 2 hours dawdling about on my emails forever.
Hmm.
I don't need to be sitting here fiddling with this thing, being a perfectionist. Like you also get much more clarity around what you actually need to be spending your time on or not,
That's so true.
um, instead of letting everything become a priority.
Yeah, yeah, those top sort of 3 to 4 real intentional needle movers should be the
Yes,
priority.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because and that's a really good point because it can be easy to kind of be like, oh God, what do I focus on now? What are those really important things to focus on in the business?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, instead of just being busy for the sake of being busy. And
yeah,
that's another kind of myth that we and these old beliefs that we carry in, right? Like
yeah.
I need to be doing a lot in order for me to consider myself productive and valuable.
I've got to look busy
So we
so
fill
that
up
people walk past.
yeah, so we then fill up our days with like lots of busy work.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a really good point, actually. So, what would be, let's just say you were giving somebody who is stepping into their own business and they're maybe feeling like they're a bit out of alignment, they want to have a little bit more fun. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give them to help them?
Okay, so I think two things. The first thing is to get really clear about what it is that you actually want to be doing in your own business.
Hmm.
Um, and that sometimes can take a while, like really sitting with your core values. And I do a little thing with my clients where I send them this massive menu of like different values.
Yeah,
And I tell them to pick 10, and then from that 10, pick five,
yeah,
and then from that five, pick three.
yeah,
It's very hard. It's very
yeah.
hard
I'll
because
bet
you
it
want
is.
all of it. But when you get those three, that it brings a lot more clarity around, okay, what do I actually want to go for, and what do I want in my life, and what do I not,
Yeah.
right? So that's sort of the first piece. So working with those core values, and then
Mm,
from there, um, looking at what work you could be doing that is going to align with those values.
yeah,
So the Japanese have this concept ikigai.
yeah,
I'm sure you probably know of it.
yeah.
Um, and or spending that time with, finding your ikigai, finding that intersection between what you love, what you can do, what the world actually needs, and what you can be paid for. I think
Yeah,
those are the four things,
I think
looking at that
so.
overlap.
Yeah.
Um, and it is worth, it takes a while, but it is worth really spending that time first to set that up and figuring that piece out first, so
Mm.
that when you do start that business or when you're tweaking your business, you know that you're in it for good, in a good way, and it's that's really going to set you up for um a successful business where success means joy and ease and whatever your values are, but something that's really in alignment.
Mm.
And then the second thing for building more fun into your life is, like I said, planning your fun first. So
Yes.
prioritizing that and making that a part of your life and giving that the fun things, whatever that means to you, like giving that a place in your day.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that
alongside the
so
work.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that I'm really going to prioritize now. So thank you for sharing that.
Yay.
So
Yeah, I'd
helpful.
love to know how you get on with that.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. Absolutely. I've loved this conversation. I think it's yeah, I think it's a really great invitation for all of us to look at, like, what are those things in business that maybe we're doing that don't feel good anymore, and being
Mm-hmm.
okay to shift that. I actually did an episode on the podcast this week about, like, pivoting and being okay with pivoting. Like, if something doesn't
Yeah.
feel good anymore, we don't have to keep doing it. Um,
Yeah, that's another old messaging, isn't it? Like,
right.
in
Yes.
the old days, people would work with a company, or the figure out, okay, I'm an accountant or whatever, and then
Yep.
you're an accountant for life, right? Or you work with
Exactly.
that company for life. That
Yeah.
used to be the model.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I, being a manifesting generator, I have lots of different things that I want to be
Yeah,
able to sink my teeth into, right? So
yeah.
I've had to work on becoming okay with, like, if something does not serve my highest good, it's okay for me to let that go and to move
Mhm.
into what does feel really good for me. So there is that invitation, isn't there, to just kind of look at your business and all areas of your life and kind of go, where could this be feeling better? Where could I be having more fun, experiencing more joy, and
Yeah.
actually giving yourself the permission to move forward and change that?
Yeah, yeah, and just the last piece that I want to speak to as well is
Yeah.
this idea that, like, oh, I'm good at XYZ, so I should do that,
Mm,
or I have already worked in this industry or in this field for the last 15 years, so it
yep.
makes sense that I should stay in that and keep doing that. But
Hmm.
no, there's actually nobody says that you should have to do that. Like, there's no
No.
rule. You can absolutely change, right?
Yes.
You don't have to do something just because, oh, I'm good at it or I've been doing it for a long time. Like,
Yep.
there could be
Yeah.
many other things that you're good at,
Yeah.
right?
That's right. Your business, your rules. Do it your way.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been an amazing chat. Now, Jamie, where can everybody find you?
So I hang out mostly on LinkedIn. If you just search for me, I don't think there are that many Jamie Pays in the
Put
world.
the link in
Um,
there.
so yeah, I'm mostly on LinkedIn, or you can find me on my website as well, which is just jamiepay.com.
Yep.
I'm also on Instagram, but I don't post that much business stuff there yet. That might be changing. Right now, I post a lot of I reshare a lot of reels of Malaysian food
Yeah.
because
Yum.
um yeah, and like dog memes and Real Housewife memes. It's a bit of a
Joyful.
madness on my Instagram at the moment.
Yeah,
That's what's playful for me at the moment, I
there you
guess.
go. Honor that.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'll make sure that I pop the links in the show notes. And yeah, again, this was a beautiful conversation. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being in Clients Confidence and Cash. And yeah, this was a
Yes.
lot of fun.
Thank you for the space and thank you for having me. I've
Oh,
loved having this conversation as well. And I just want to say that, like, as I talk about it, it helps me as well. It, like, reminds me, to walk the talk
right.
and to play the talk, as it were.
Yes. I love that so much.